February 25th, 1964, Miami Beach, Convention Hall. There's a man in the blue corner, and the odds makers have already decided how this night ends. 7-1. That's not a prediction, that's a verdict. That's Vegas telling you before the first bell even rings that what you're about to watch is a formality. A man about to get hurt, badly, in front of a paying crowd. Across the ring stands Sonny Liston, former convict, built like something that shouldn't be allowed inside a boxing ring. Two-time destroyer of Floyd Patterson, knocked him out in the first round, twice like it was nothing. Liston doesn't just beat people, he erases them. Reporters ringside aren't asking if Liston wins tonight, they're asking how many rounds the kid in the other corner survives. The kid in the other corner is 22 years old, Cassius Clay, and he's not in his corner quiet. He's not sitting there accepting the math everyone in that building has already done in their heads. He's loud. He's been loud for weeks, predicting rounds, mocking Liston to his face at weigh-ins with a fury that some reporters actually thought was fear, dressed up as bravado, a kid losing his mind because he knows what's coming. Here's what you need to sit with before we go any further. Everybody in that building, from the cut man to the ringside judges to Liston himself, believes they already know how tonight ends. They're all about to find out they don't know anything. Rewind a little. Before this night, Cassius Clay is a name people know mostly for talking. Olympic gold in Rome in 1960. Real, legitimate, but still just a young amateur with a big mouth by the standards of the sport. Professional boxing doesn't run on talk. It runs on power, and Clay, by measure of raw punching power, isn't Liston. Not close. What he's got instead is speed nobody his size should have, footwork that looks more like a dancer than a heavyweight, and a habit, a compulsive, relentless habit, of saying out loud exactly who he believes he already is, long before he's proven a single bit of it against someone like Liston. I am the greatest. He's been saying it for years, not as a hope, not as a goal he's working toward, as a fact, stated flatly, before the resume exists to back it up. Understand how strange that actually is. Most people wait. Most people accumulate evidence first, wins, titles, respect, and only then, cautiously, start to describe themselves in bigger terms. Clay skipped that whole process. He decided who he was first, out loud, in public, and then spent every fight since trying to catch up to the claim. That's a dangerous way to live, because now the gap between the claim and the proof is public. Everyone's watching to see if he can close it, or if he's just a loudmouth about to get exposed by the scariest man in the sport. Tonight's supposed to be the night the gap gets exposed for good. Liston isn't some anonymous professional doing a job. Liston is a wall. A former enforcer, hardened by prison, by poverty, by a life that gave him zero reason to perform anything. His power is simply real, demonstrated, undeniable. He doesn't need to talk. He's already erased two former champions without much conversation at all. At the weigh-in, days before the fight, Clay comes unglued in a way that even his own camp finds alarming, screaming at Liston, physically restrained by his own people, pulse and blood pressure reportedly spiking to levels that actually worry the physician on hand. Reporters write it up the next morning, calling it a mental collapse in progress, a young man so terrified of what's coming that he's losing composure days before he even has to face it. That's the read everyone settles on, not confidence, not strategy. Fear, barely disguised, coming apart in public. And here's the crack, the moment where the story could have gone either way. If that read is right, if this really is just fear leaking out under pressure, then everything Clay's been saying for years is about to be exposed. In the most public, most permanent way a lie can be exposed. Knocked out, on camera, in front of the entire country. The 7-1 odds aren't cruel, they're just honest, given everything anyone can actually see. The bell rings, and for the first few rounds, something strange happens. Strange enough that ringside reporters start second-guessing their own eyes. Clay isn't standing still to trade punches with a heavyweight built to end fights early. He's moving, circling, using reach and speed to stay just outside the one range where Liston's power actually matters. Round after round, Liston keeps advancing, and Clay keeps sliding just out of range, popping jabs in and out, refusing to give Liston the stationary target he's used to demolishing. This is where it gets dangerous in a completely different way, because staying that mobile for that long against a fighter of that size takes an enormous amount out of you physically. And midway through the fight, something happens that has nothing to do with Liston's fists at all. Clay's eyes start burning, badly. Something's gotten into them. To this day, people argue about exactly what, whether it came off Liston's gloves accidentally or otherwise. But whatever it is, it's blinding him. Actual tears streaming, vision going white with pain in the middle of a heavyweight title fight. He goes back to his corner between rounds, essentially unable to see. His own trainer, Angelo Dundee, is looking at a fighter who can barely open his eyes, in a fight everyone already expected him to lose, even at full capacity. This is the moment where most fighters, most people, would take the out. Tell the corner to stop it, claim foul, claim injury, live to fight another day rather than go back out half-blind against a man who's already ended 2 championship reigns without much trouble. Clay doesn't ask to stop. He tells his corner one thing, according to the accounts that survive. Cut my gloves off if you have to, but I'm not stopping. Picture that for a second. Not the finished, polished version of the story, the actual moment. A young fighter, eyes streaming, barely able to make out shapes in front of him, being told by every rational instinct in his body that this is exactly the disaster everyone predicted. And instead of taking the easy exit that history would have completely forgiven, he goes back out anyway. For most of the next round, he survives on instinct and memory more than sight, staying mobile, using what little he can see, refusing to become the stationary target that would let Liston finish this the way he finished everyone else. His vision starts clearing by the next round. And something in the fight shifts, not just physically, but in the room itself. The reporters who came in expecting a formality start scribbling different notes. Liston, 6 years older, carrying more weight, more mileage, more wear than his reputation let on, starts breathing harder than a man who's supposed to end fights in the first round should be breathing. By round 6, it's not Clay who looks like he's coming apart anymore, it's Liston. And then, an ending nobody in that building was prepared to write into the story. Liston, sitting on his stool between rounds, tells his corner he's done. Shoulder injury by the official account. He doesn't answer the bell for round 7. The destroyer of 2 former champions, the man built like a threat you don't recover from, quits on his stool. Clay is up on the ropes before the decision's even fully official, screaming down at the ringside press, the same press that wrote him off as a terrified kid days earlier, screaming that he shook up the world. Not politely, not with practiced humility, with the exact same certainty he'd been broadcasting for years, except now there's a result standing behind the claim for the first time. Here's what actually happened that night, underneath the noise. Clay didn't become the greatest in that ring. He'd already decided that, years earlier, before a single piece of evidence existed to support it. What happened in that ring is that the evidence finally caught up to a claim he'd been making the entire time. That's the order most people get backwards. They wait for proof before they'll let themselves claim anything. Clay did it in reverse, claimed it first, loudly, publicly, at real risk of humiliation if it never showed up, and then spent every fight, every round, every half-blind moment on those ropes, closing the gap between the claim and the proof. Identity, done this way, isn't a reward for accomplishment. It's a debt you take on before you can pay it, and then you spend years, sometimes an entire career, making good on it. You do the opposite of this constantly, and it's costing you more than you realize. You wait. You tell yourself you'll call yourself a writer once you've published something. You'll call yourself disciplined once the streak gets long enough. You'll call yourself capable once somebody else confirms it for you first. Meanwhile, you're sitting on evidence you could be generating right now, today, if you just claim the identity before you feel like you've earned it. The same way a scared kid from Louisville stood in a ring against the most feared heavyweight alive and refused to let his own fear write the final chapter before the fight was actually over. The gap between who you say you are and who you've proven you are, that gap doesn't close by waiting. It closes by fighting through rounds you can barely see straight through, because you already told people who you were before you had the right to. So ask yourself honestly, what are you still waiting for permission to already be? What's the claim you haven't made yet because you're waiting for proof that only shows up after you make it?